Hello and welcome to Capitol Hill. I'm Samantha Hawley. Possible changes to the tax on superannuation for high-income earners is again dominating political debate. We won't know precisely what's on the cards until the budget in May, but there's already plenty of talk. To discuss that issue and others, I'm joined now by the Labor MP, Michelle Rowland in Sydney, and the Liberal MP, Josh Frydenberg in Melbourne. Welcome to both of you.
Hi Sam, hi Michelle.
First to superannuation. The dumped Cabinet Minister Simon Crean has sent a strong warning shot to the government, demanding any changes not be retrospective, while the opposition leader, Tony Abbott, won't commit to winding back any changes the government might make.
This has to be fought, Carl, and it has to be fought on two fundamental grounds. One, the test is it a retrospective application? If it is, it should be rejected. Second, do we need to make it more sustainable? Yes, but also on the basis that we continue to grow the adequacy of the superannuation pool.
No unexpected adverse changes. Well, we aren't going to do any more damage. We aren't going to do any fiddles. Your money is safe with us. If you invest the money under the existing rules, those rules will continue. We aren't going to change the rules of the game after the game has begun.
First to you, Michelle Rowland in Sydney. It looks pretty certain now, doesn't it, that there will be changes in the budget for high-income earners and the tax that they pay on superannuation?
Well, look, I don't think anything's certain at all, Samantha, and what we have here is just speculation about what's going to be in the budget, and this happens every year on a variety of issues. But I will say this, it is a bit rich, and I won't take any lessons from the Leader of the Opposition, who was part of a government who introduced a 15% superannuation surcharge on top of the existing taxation rules for high-income earners when they were in office, and simply made the system even more complicated. So when it comes to superannuation, I think it is quite laughable for Tony Abbott to be talking in those terms, particularly when you look at the only policy we know they will have on superannuation, which is to wind back, to do away with the low-income superannuation contribution.
Well, I will get to what the opposition is planning on doing if it is elected to government, but just on this issue of the budget and super and high-income earners, if there is nothing planned in the budget, why doesn't the government just rule it out now and stop this debate, given that it is leading to quite a bit of uncertainty within the industry and within the community?
Well, look, this is being driven not by the government. This is being driven by.
Well, it is. Sorry, I'll just cut in there, just because it is partly being driven by the government. We've had a number of government figures out there today talking about this issue, including Craig Emerson, who's been talking about the wealth of people and what makes someone wealthy. So it is being driven by the government partly. You must acknowledge that.
Samantha, my point is that the speculation and the commentary around this is wafting around like it's the biggest thing that's ever happened to in any budget announcement. And quite frankly, when there is a settled policy position on this matter, and I'm a backbencher, I don't know what's discussed in Cabinet, I'm very happy to have an informed debate about it. My point is, there is no informed debate going on at the moment. When you look at the media, when you look at the hype going on about this issue, I'm very happy to have an informed debate when we actually know what is happening. I'm very happy to have an informed debate about what our policies are, what the opposition thinks about superannuation, what they've always thought about it, and bring that on.
Well, I'd put to you that, in fact, it is a debate that the government does want out there, that the government does want the community talking about. We did have the Trade Minister, Craig Emerson, this morning talking about the high-end income earners, the fabulously wealthy, he calls them. In your view, who is fabulously wealthy?
Look, I think this argument about who is wealthy and who's struggling, quite frankly, I think it's misguided. I think when you look at people's circumstances, people may have high incomes, but they would also have quite high mortgages in many cases. And I'd like to bring a specific example, Samantha. Recently in the media, there was a story run about a suburb called The Ponds, which is in my electorate, which was named as the most advantaged suburb in Australia. And when some other reporters went and talked to some people in this area, they couldn't figure out why they were being called so incredibly advantaged, because they'd been let down for so many years with lack of infrastructure, infrastructure, even now lack of communication services, lack of suitable road and rail networks. So I just put it to you that what constitutes wealthy and well-off in some people's minds is often very different from the experience that's felt on the ground. And as a local member, what I always seek to do is go around and speak to people, ask them specifically what their issues are. And I can tell you one issue which makes people a lot better off is having lower interest rates in some of these new housing estates.
All right,
like
well,
the Plains.
Josh Frydenberg, can I put it to you, in your view, who is fabulously wealthy?
Well, I just want to say congratulations to Michelle Rowland, because she simultaneously just slapped down Craig Emerson and Simon Crean in the same breath. I mean, at the end of the day, we should be encouraging more Australians to put money into super, because we have an ageing population that's going to see double the number of people over the age of 65 in the next 20 to 30 years. We want people to move off the pension and to use the money that they put into retirement. So I wouldn't be hitting anybody's super. I'd be keeping the situation as it currently sits.
Well,
and
that's very good. I'd like to just jump in there briefly, Josh Frydenberg, because if you want the situation as it is, and there are changes made by the Labor government, wouldn't it make sense then for a Liberal government, if elected, to wind those changes back? Tony Abbott couldn't guarantee that would happen. He wouldn't commit to doing that. Why doesn't the Coalition commit to winding back any changes if it's so against the changes being made in the first place?
Because at the end of the day, we don't know how bad the books really are. And when we get a chance to form government, hopefully after September the 14th, we'll get a proper look at it. I mean, don't forget, the Treasurer said over 300 times he was going to produce a budget surplus in May. We now know he's heading for a $20 billion deficit. That's why he's, reaching out to super to fill that gap. And, it wouldn't be responsible for us to make promises without seeing the state of the book. So at the end of the day, we can't trust this government. They've taken a net surplus position to $145 billion of debt. It's a slug on every Australian man, woman and child. And at the end of the day, you can't take them at their word.
But in a sense then, if the Coalition doesn't wind back any changes to the taxing of superannuation for high income earners, the Coalition will have a double dip in a sense, because it will also reintroduce a 15% tax on the superannuation of low income earners. So you'll be hitting both ends of the scale. How do you think that will go down with the Australian public?
Well, to your point, Sam, at the end of the day, this Labor government has cut the co-contributions for low-income earners from $1,500 under John Howard to $500 now. So they're no friend of low-income earners. What we've said about that tax offset is it's funded by the mining tax that was supposed to bring in $2 billion worth of revenue, this year, and it's bringing in nothing. So, I don't even trust the Labor government to keep that tax offset, because they're not, getting any money coming in from the mining tax, which they promised would be this river of gold.
I might just leave that issue there, and if we could move on to another issue of the day. The media boss, Rupert Murdoch, has been in Darwin and has been speaking to the media there about the government's 457 visa debate. He's labelled the language that the government has been using as disgraceful and racist. Michelle Rowland in Sydney, this is a very important issue in your electorate. What's your response to what he's had to say?
Well, I welcome Rupert Murdoch's foray into immigration. I note his comments specifically that he welcomes immigration. He uses the example of the United States, saying it was built on migration. I think Australia is a far better example to show how we build on migration. I represent an electorate which has about 80 different distinct nationalities, not one of which a single one is dominant. But I welcome his foray into this debate. I disagree with his analysis on 457 visas, but I look forward to his ongoing contribution and what he thinks of the Liberal Party's view on how it has behavioural protocols as its policy for asylum seekers, treating them worse than criminals. I welcome his comments on things such as Tony Abbott referring to a peaceful invasion by immigrants. I welcome his comments on things like the shadow multicultural spokesperson who basically said migrants were smelly and needed to learn how to use deodorant. So I welcome his ongoing contribution to the debate.
Okay, well, because it's a very strong contribution, racist and disgraceful. It's interesting that that's something that you would welcome.
No, I welcome his analysis of various policies.
Very bizarre.
I certainly
Michelle.
disagree. I certainly disagree with his views, but I think he is very much entitled to have views, and I welcome his views on what the Liberal Party is promoting and whether or not he thinks they're racist and disgraceful. And Josh is welcome to defend each of those policies which I've named.
Josh Frydenberg, would you like to do that?
You know, the point you asked a simple question about Rupert Murdoch's comments about 457s, and what he was doing rightly was highlighting, you know, how badly this issue has been handled. We only go back to January when Chris Bowen, then the Minister for Immigration, said that we've got the balance right, or that the government's got the balance right on 457s. You go to the Prime Minister's comments, ironically in Beijing, where she'll be at the end of the week, when she said in April 2011 from Beijing in a doorstop that she's got the balance right on 457s. The clear reason why the government has done this backflip on 457s and started to target foreign workers, may I say in a discriminatory way, is simply because of the political weakness of the Prime Minister. She owes the union movement something. You know, the union movement's 13% of the workforce, of the private sector workforce, and they're 50% of every Labor vote in the federal conferences and the state conferences, and 100% of the votes in the caucus. So at the end of the day, the Prime Minister, because of her political weakness, has had to go to the unions cap in hand and promise them some tough talk on the 457s. The truth is, this government's been in office for 5 years. If there was a problem with 457s, why didn't they deal with them before? There's been only one successful prosecution, Sam, for, you know, abuses of the 457s. In fact, they've doubled in the last 12 months to 125,000 under this government. I mean, the facts tell one very clear story. The 457s are filling an important void
You still
in the
haven't answered the question,
marketplace.
Josh. You still haven't answered the question.
We might leave that topic
Defend
there. But look, can we just briefly move to North Korea? A very important issue here. Obviously, over the weekend we heard some very disturbing rhetoric from the North Koreans. The Prime Minister is heading to China at the end of this week. First to you, Josh. What do you think the message should be?
Well, look, this is very disturbing, the news coming out of the Korean Peninsula, this sabre rattling by Kim Jong-un, who's a 29-year-old leader of North Korea. He's unproven and he's unpredictable, and this is a country with up to 12 nuclear weapons. So we have to be absolutely worried about their ability to target American and South Korean troops, and indeed, you know, Japanese troops as well. So I am very concerned. The Prime Minister needs to go to Beijing with a very strong message to the Chinese leadership. Use whatever leverage you have, and they do have leverage, use whatever leverage you have over the North Koreans to get them to step back from the brink, because this is very dangerous, and any miscalculation could lead to an armed conflict which would be difficult to contain.
And Michelle Rowland, just very briefly, because we're running out of time, do you agree with those sentiments?
I think it is very proper that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister raised this. There was an illuminating interview on your program yesterday about this issue. The sabre rattling and the threats that are being made by North Korea, it's part of a modus operandi, but let's not forget that you know, one false move, one incident, and there could be some very dire consequences for everyone involved.
All right. Thank you very much to Michelle Rowland in Sydney and Josh Frydenberg in Melbourne. And that is Capitol Hill for today.
Thanks, Sam.
We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.